Washington, this is VOA News. Syria, Islamic State militants battle for Eastern Air Base. Philippines battered by Typhoon Hagupit. I'm Ray Kouguell reporting from Washington. Activists say Syrian government warplanes have carried out at least 8 airstrikes against Islamic State fighters who attacked a key military base. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says Syrian troops and pro-regime militia stopped the attack on Deir Ezzor military base. It says both sides suffered heavy losses in the fighting. Syria is accusing Israel of launching 2 airstrikes on it Sunday, one near the Damascus International Airport and another near the town of Dimas, close to the border with Lebanon. Syrian state television says the Israeli enemy committed aggression, but there were no casualties. Israel has not commented on the Syrian report. Pakistani security officials say a U.S. drone strike on a Taliban compound in North Waziristan killed at least 4 militants, including a wanted senior al-Qaeda leader. 2 others were wounded. Military officials identified one of the dead in Sunday's strike as Umar Farouk, a key al-Qaeda figure in Pakistan. Farouk was reportedly close to the group's former leader Osama bin Laden and current head Ayman al-Zawahiri. Departing U.S. Defense Chief Chuck Hagel told the remaining American troops in Afghanistan that they still have challenges to meet, even as their mission soon will shift from fighting Taliban insurgents to training Afghan troops. Secretary Hagel, who recently resigned, made a final stop in Afghanistan Sunday, telling U.S. troops at a base near the eastern city of Jalalabad that the job's not over. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan in October 2001 to overthrow the Taliban regime that harbored al-Qaeda fighters responsible for the terrorist attacks in the U.S. a month earlier. This is VOA News. Typhoon Hagupit killed at least 2 people in the Philippines after making landfall on the east coast overnight. The storm crashed into remote fishing communities of Samar Island, tearing roofs off of buildings. Power is out throughout the region and roads are covered with trees and debris. The massive storm packed winds as high as 210 kilometers per hour. Simone Orendine reports.
The Philippine Red Cross says it continues to monitor Typhoon Hagupit's effects as state forecasters expect it to make landfall on several more islands. Red Cross Secretary-General Gwendolyn Pang says rapid assessment teams are doing initial surveys of areas that the storm has left. She says they cannot get inside a few of the towns that took Hagupit's first lashings. Pang says with the memory of killer storm surges from last year's super typhoon Haiyan fresh on people's minds, it took little convincing to get residents to safe ground. Simone Orendine for VOA News, Manila.
More than 1 million people have been evacuated from coastal villages and areas prone to landslides and placed in temporary shelters. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel is bitterly accusing Russia of trying to meddle with the desires of Eastern European nations to join the European Union. Chancellor Merkel told Germany's Die Welt newspaper that Russia has created difficulties for Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine after they made sovereign decisions to sign agreements with the EU. She said that Russia has broken a 1994 agreement guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The United States sent 6 men who are being held at the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to Uruguay. The Pentagon says the 4 Syrians, 1 Tunisian, and 1 Palestinian will be resettled in Uruguay as refugees. All of them have been detained as suspected militants with ties to al-Qaeda, but were never charged. Gunmen helped more than 200 inmates escape from a Nigerian prison overnight, the 3rd massive jailbreak in the West African country since early November. It remains unclear who orchestrated the attack on the medium security facility, but extremist group Boko Haram is suspected in previous raids to free inmates. Saudi Arabia says it arrested 135 people suspected of scheming to sabotage security in the kingdom. The Interior Ministry says those arrested included 26 foreign nationals, among them 16 Syrians and 3 Yemenis. Riyadh says the detainees belong to suspected terrorist groups, with some of them having fought as insurgents in other countries and now planning to launch attacks inside Saudi Arabia. It says other suspects were accused of smuggling weapons into Saudi Arabia and helping to raise money for terrorist groups. I'm Ray Kouguell in Washington.
That's the latest world news from VOA.